The Carnivore Diet Meal Plan. Today, we're going to be discussing my favorite way to cook a steak, sous vide cooking. What's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I've been doing this lion diet for a couple months now. I've been doing it intermittently for about a year and a half, and I've been doing carnivore consistently throughout that year. Now, I've also been doing carnivore intermittently for years before that. In total, I've lost about 150 pounds, and I'm currently doing a fitness challenge and a weight loss challenge with this lion diet. So I'd like to thank everyone out there who's been subscribing to this. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. I hit 800 subscribers tonight while I was shooting this video, so I'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of that. So let's get into it. We're going to discuss sous vide cooking. So why sous vide? Well, sous vide is a type of machine you buy. It's like a wand, and it goes in the water. You'll see I shot some video for this. And this wand goes in the water, and it heats up the water and circulates the water around. You put food in bags, suck as much air out as you can. Now, you can do that with a vacuum sealer, or you can submerge the bag in the water, and the water pressure will push the air out of the bag, and then you can kind of zip it closed if you're using a Ziploc bag. But I usually use vacuum sealed bags. Now, all these bags are food grade plastic, so my concern about cancer honestly isn't that much. And for how often I cook this way, I'm not too concerned about it. But the reason why I cook this way is it's by far my favorite way to cook a steak. Now, that's subjective, right? Everyone likes their steak done their own way. Now, what I found through the years, I wanted to get to the point through the years that barbecuing was my thing. I got to a point where I wanted to be able to touch a steak and kind of tell if it was rare or medium. And I was getting pretty good at doing that after years of experience with that. Whether I was cooking that way on a stove or on a barbecue, it didn't matter. Because when you cook sous vide, I have to admit, I feel like a fraud because there's no real cooking involved. I really like this sous vide cooking because you cook the steak and then you sear it afterwards. So it's a reverse sear. So some people like to sear their steaks first. So I used to do that all the time. I would put a steak in a pan, and then I would have that pan on high, and I would get that brown crust on both sides of the steak and the whole edge of the steak. And then I would put it in the oven if it was a nice thick steak or even a roast. And I'd put it in the oven at maybe 350 degrees or so. I forget exactly what temperature now. And I would do probably about 15 minutes a pound. Now, that always came out really nice. And it's a good way to get a tasty steak, but it doesn't always come out the grade you want it. Sometimes you want it to be rare or medium rare or well done, and you can't quite control it that way unless you put a thermometer in there. But if you do a reverse sear, you would put it in the oven and bake it for a while at a really low temperature, and then you would take it out and then sear it at the end, and you would brown the steak. Now, sous vide cooking is somewhat like that. You put the meat in the bag, you take the bag, you put it in the water, you take all the air out of it, you seal it, and then you put the wand in there. So when it comes to sous vide cooking, it's just easier if I show you. So I made a video from the time I put the meat in the water till the time I took it off the barbecue. I cooked it two different ways. I took two different steaks, and I did one on an old pizza barbecue I had. And that barbecue, well, you'll see it. You'll see it in action. But I also do a different type of sear with a flamethrower. And yeah, it's a little handheld flamethrower. It's really cool. It's called a sous vide gun. So why are we going over this video now? Well, one of the reasons why I want to go over this video is everyone's looking for Father's Day gifts or a little something for themselves to cook the steaks the way they want. When it comes to being a carnivore, you can just buy whatever you want, but it's always best to get things on sale. And these sous vide machines often go on sale before Father's Day, usually a couple weeks before, so they have time to deliver it. So I want to make sure that if you're interested in something like this, now's the time to get it. You might be interested in getting one of these sooner than later. It's the most tender way to cook a steak. So let's get into the footage. So this is the wand. This is the sous vide wand. It just clamps onto the side of a pot or a bucket. And this is a special bucket. And it circulates the water. Those two little holes that were at the bottom of that silver part circulate the water around, and they heat up the water. So I'm just clamping it tight to the side of the bucket. And these are the steaks I'm cooking. I'm cooking a ribeye and a blade steak. So those are vacuum sealed bags I get from the butcher, and there's a rack that goes on top of that. So if some of the meat's floating, that helps keep everything in place. You can take that lid and put it on. It's just a silicone lid. And this is a company called Anova. So you can see here, I'm adjusting the temperature. 112.6 degrees is the hot water that came out of my tap. Now I'm adjusting it, so I want it to go to 135 degrees, or 134.5. And then I hit the time. I'm gonna let it cook for 2 hours and 5 minutes. So it's that easy to use. The temperature at the top shows you where it's at. The middle numbers show you the temperature you want to get to, and the bottom one is the time. So right now the water's not too hot. I decided I didn't want one steak sitting on top of the other. I want them standing on their side, so it'll help with water circulation, because you want that hot water to navigate all the way through. That's why the sides of this tub are rounded. So if it was a square edge tub, the water wouldn't circulate quite as well. So it's not a big thing, but that's usually something I just watch out for. So this is the app that comes with the Anova Pro. Now this comes with all 3 Anova models, and you can get these types of sous vide machines anywhere really, but I like this Anova. So here's the example of how you can control the temperature and the timer on your app on your phone. So when I'm at work, I set this up, and when I come home, I don't have to cook a steak. I just have to take it out and sear it. That's it. So I can start eating within 5 to 7 minutes by the time I get home. So there's the current temperature, and that's what it's set for, and there's 44 minutes left on the timer. The one thing I like about the Anova Pro is there's all sorts of different ways you can cook steaks. People who use this app post different ways they've cooked different foods, and you can see reviews on each one, and they put the recipes and the menus and everything you need to cook the dish the way they did it, the way they felt came out to perfection. And everyone gets to review these. So there's a slew of different types of foods you can cook, as you can see. And the nice thing is it doesn't just have to be meat. So you can cook vegetables for the kids while you're making your steak. Let's find a nice steak. Here we go. Sous vide medium rare steak. So 130 degrees for 2 hours. You don't have to cook it in 2 hours. You can cook it for 3 hours. You can cook it in 1 hour. It depends on your taste. It depends on what you like. I find the longer you cook something with a sous vide, it's kind of like when you cook things in a slow cooker. You cook it too long and it gets really tender, but it gets dry. And you don't want your meat to be dry. You want this perfect balance where you cook it long enough that it becomes super tender, but also really juicy. So this shows you every step of the way, and I showed you searing it in a cast iron skillet. So that's one of the nice things about this. Typically in the winter, I just use a cast iron skillet to sear my steak. Apparently eggs are a wonderful thing. So this is another thing we can look at here. We're just going through some of the different foods that this app offers, and it shows you all the different foods and different ways you can prepare the foods, whether you want it at a certain temperature, what time to cook it at. They don't all have to be the same times. I'm not trying to be a spokesperson for Anova. It's just a really user-friendly experience. A friend of mine, actually a client of mine who's a chef, highly recommended I get this particular brand. So as you can see, I'm patting the meat down because after you take it out of the bags, after it's cooked, you don't want to sear it while it's wet. So it's a good idea to pat it down. This is a pizza barbecue I got from Blackstone. They don't make it anymore, but it's designed to cook pizzas really fast. You can cook a pizza in about a minute. And I haven't cooked pizza on it in over a couple years. So I dusted it off, and it can typically get up to 1200 degrees easily. And I thought for the first time out, I better not be too courageous. I don't want to risk any grease fires or anything like that because it is a fatty cut of steak. So you can see that flame's really shooting. If I would have left it going for another 5 minutes, it would have easily gotten up to 1200. It's over 900 degrees at the moment. So the goal is to sear the outside of it as fast as possible so you don't cook the inside. So it's already cooked all the way through. I know it looked raw when I was patting it down, but that was already cooked at 134 degrees. So that's a medium rare steak. And you can see this flame, what it does is it hits the bottom of this pan, and there's a stone sitting on the pan. And there's a stone suspended from the ceiling that the flame is hitting. This pizza oven works as a convection oven, and it's pretty interesting. It can cook things so fast. So this is the first time I've ever tried this, so I wasn't sure how it would come out. And I had to flip this steak, so you get to see me do some magic here. Ooh, ta-da! And I put it back in. I was worried it would stick to the stone, so I just wanted to see how that went, and it seemed fine. And I have to admit, it came out great. And the next time I do this, probably in a day or two, I'm going to try it at 1200 degrees, because the sear on this is the best sear I've ever had on a steak. It's even better than a cast iron pan. You'll see in a minute, I typically do the handheld version of this with a propane tank attached to a little handheld gun. And this just gives a nice even sear. The sides, the top, I'm very impressed with it. It's really fun to use too. It takes about 5 to maybe 10 minutes tops to heat up to its maximum temperature in the summer. So on a nice hot day, I bet you it takes 5 minutes. And it buries the needle. So the needle goes past 1200 degrees. So you can see some of that grease is starting to catch on fire. So that's what I was worried about if I would have had it going too hot right off the bat. So I'm glad I did my trial run at about 900 to 10,000 degrees. It's actually a fun way to cook. Now, even though it's designed as a pizza barbecue, you can cook anything on it. They actually have steaks in the promotion magazines to show you that you can cook anything else on this, not just pizza. So it's designed to cook pizza, but man, you can do so much. That was a really awesome sear. So this is a sous vide gun. It's pretty neat. I just bought that hose that attaches to the bottom of this, and typically I use little green propane tanks that you get for camping, but this hose just makes life a lot easier. So if you tip this gun down too far, a safety mechanism kicks in, and it actually turns the propane off. So it's a nice, safe gun to use. And I've used it quite a bit now. I've had it for a year. It's very well used. And it's a fun way to cook because you get a lot of control over the sear. Now, a lot of people, I get the odd person every now and then who's like, how does that taste? I bet you it tastes like propane. But I tell you, it doesn't. It just tastes like a regular steak. I forgot my tongs to flip the steak, so I just used a pair of scissors that I had. I can just sear these in a pan, but this is so much more fun. It only takes a couple minutes. And this one is the ribeye. So the ribeye had great flavor. I had to actually stop by my neighbor's place to see if I could get someone to film this while I was doing this. And they had no idea what that guy was doing. They've heard me use this propane gun many times. And finally, at one point, the neighbor came over and said, "What are you doing?" and you just hear this sound. And yeah, it's me cooking steak. So yeah, this is how they came out. You'll notice all the way through it was nice and medium rare. And I thought I'd end with my dog Canine. He's a rescue dog. He's very well behaved, very scared and timid of the world. And I also put the shot in here with the fork just to show that I wasn't using my own fork to feed my dog and putting it back in my mouth. So anyway, thanks for watching this. I really appreciate you tuning in. Take care.